Margaret.
Yes, I deliberately changed it tonight because I didn't want a rehash of all that again. Good evening, mate. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. Very well. It's been a busy
had
week.
To bring that up. Had to bring that back, of course. That was good fun last time.
You know, I knew you were going to.
Of course. So this is number 5. I think it's kind of crazy that it's number 5.
yeah, great. And it's the ToolUp Tuesday is not on a Tuesday.
Indeed. For those astute and paying lots of attention, of course, this is ToolUp Thursday, so still TUT. But yes, not Tuesday. Couldn't get scheduled on Tuesday, so we thought we'd shift it to a Thursday and still make it a thing. So I guess we should probably figure out what tonight's plan is.
Sounds like a good one.
Yes. I think something you and I were banding around a little bit as an idea is, since last time, you and I have both separately been investigating a bit more in Golang. Because obviously, in case anyone hasn't seen last time's recording yet, it's probably quite entertaining to look back on. I haven't looked back on it. We very much muddled our way through, I think is fair to say.
Yep. I think that's the nature of the show, wasn't it?
Exactly. But I think we've had a chance to maybe get a little more grounding around Golang a little bit, so it might be interesting just to go back, take a look at what we did again, make sure we understand it, and then go from there, I think. So let me bring up my screen, which I think is this one. Yes, it's this one. Good. And let's go take a look at what's going on in here. So
we're into the player decision.
Yes, we were. And interestingly, I'm already looking at this going, oh, we've put everything in one file. I really don't like this.
Yeah, but I think that was part of the discussion we were having last time, though, wasn't it, as well?
It was, wasn't it?
I think one of the things we were struggling with was actually the structure of a Go project.
Yeah, indeed.
And I think we were trying to bring almost .NET style mentality to a Go project, and it just doesn't work like that.
Exactly. Very, very different. So maybe if we break down, just for anyone who is tuning in and listening in here and maybe interested in Golang, just what the intent was. We were going to be building a player decision API, really simple REST API. Our game will effectively generate world events that a user has to respond to, and this was the API for the responses to those events, effectively. So really, really simple in terms of what it's doing. You've got a decisions endpoint. There's one just to get all the decisions that have been made in the past to date by that user, and then a decisions by ID as well, and then posting that one then as well. So nothing particularly complex, nothing particularly exciting, but it did take us a little while to get our heads around how it all hangs together. Interestingly, already I'm looking at some of the packages that we used. So the way that packages work in Golang, and this was something you and I were talking about as well, you can import some of these system packages just by using this kind of syntax here, or you can import these ones from a public repository like GitHub, for example. For one other project I'm working on, I'm using Mux, which I think is quite common for like HTTP middleware, effectively, routing, etc. Whereas we chose to go with Gin here.
I think that was because it was the first example we found.
I think it was, exactly.
And also it was quite a nice pun.
Indeed. Indeed. So this was the one that we were looking at. It seemed to have a lot built in from what we were looking at. Yeah, you know, it's effectively just a middleware there for your HTTP. Yeah.
I'm curious as to what your decision was in the other project you've been working on to go with Mux over this.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was just trying to pull out here. So let me just bring that project up on screen for a minute. Actually, I can just find the link to the right repo. So here we go. Because I think Mux is one I've seen used in a lot of other Go projects from what I've been kind of learning from other people's code out on GitHub and just trying to piece things together. It's looking for a new maintainer. So any open source aficionados wanting to take a project, there you go. But here we go. HTTP request multiplexer. It's just a request router and dispatcher. So it doesn't. I think really it's just a very, very simple, HTTP server endpoint generator. Whereas from what I was reading about Gin, it does seem to have quite a fair amount more, basic auth in there, custom HTTP configuration, let's encrypt. So it's a lot more feature rich. Because for this other project, and we probably won't get into it today, but for this other project, I'm using Azure Container Apps, Dapper, Cada. I felt there was a fair amount of stuff I probably didn't need because it's handled by that layer instead. So I just went for simplicity more than anything.
Okay. That's a good reason. I would always strive to head that direction anyway, to be honest, is the less you have to think about. Particularly, like you said, that list of technologies you rattled off there's a lot of cognitive overhead on all of those things. So the more you can reduce that, reduce for everything else, the better, I think.
But I mean, if you put both of these side by side, Mux here and Gin, if I can find Gin, there we go. You'll see they look very, very similar. You set up your router, you have your different endpoints that you're handling, and then sending them off to the event handlers there then.
Out of interest, in Gorilla then, how does that handle the methods?
So you just append it to the end. So what you would do, is there an example? Here we go, just like this. So just append the dot methods at the end.
It's the end of each.
Yeah, so if I jump to this one and show you my controller here. So what I've got is at the top just these different prefixes here.
Right.
And then you can see I've got a /swagger endpoint, and that's just going to redirect you to a folder that I've got with all the static files to generate the Swagger page itself. Yeah. So just serve it as a static file server effectively.
And are you generating those with Go or with Node?
So the files themselves are just taken from the dist folder of the Swagger UI repo on GitHub. Right. So nothing adventurous there. But then the swagger.json, there's a Golang package which you can use to generate that based on comments, etc. But then the rest of this is, again, very similar. Router, handle that endpoint. We're going to call this particular event handler then this function, or in this case, it would be a method, I suppose. Because it's on the object. And then it's doing it on a get. One thing I did notice with this, actually, and I think this is a Mux nuance, is I had to wrap my main... I was in my other one here. I had to wrap my main HTTP listener in this remove trailing slash bit here.
Right.
And basically just remove that trailing slash at the end, because if I did something like localhost tenant like that, or tenant like that, it counts those as two different endpoints. It doesn't count it as the same endpoint. And rather than making it ugly and managing two endpoints, easier just to remove the slash before it even gets there.
So here's something that was, it goes back to, I think, what we were talking about right at the start. If you go back up to the top of your file there now.
This one, yep.
Right. So you have a reference to other things in this repo.
I do, yes.
Right?
Mm.
Does that mean you have to have committed those?
No, not at all. It's a great question. So let me close some of these down a minute and we'll walk through this. So I've got my, zoom in a little bit here on the right. I've got my tenant folder here.
Yep.
And in my tenant folder, I have this go.mod file. So last time what we will have done is we'll have run, I think it was go mod init or something similar to that.
That's
anyway. And what we do is we initialize that module effectively. So modules are like packages effectively inside a Golang. And you can see here for this particular package or module, I am saying I have to use Go version 118. That is the version I expect to use. Then there's a number of different requirements that I've got in there, some direct, some indirect. I didn't specify those manually. There's a command that I can run when I'm in the right directory here. So event, platform, API, tenants, there we go. I can just run this go mod tidy. And what it will do is it will actually go and update all of that for me. So if I just save that and run that again, see it's finding all that stuff. And now it's actually gone, and a bit like we would with our NuGet packages and NuGet JSON.
Okay.
So coming back,
I was going to say, so in that file that you're referencing in your main.go, so if we take, do you have to declare that as being part of the package?
This platform API tenant service thing here. Yeah, so if we, where are we going? Tenant service. So let's go here. When I'm in here, if I scroll all the way to the top, you can see that I'm in the service package, but I'm not declaring anywhere that it's, that it's part of that overall module. By nature and by virtue of it being in this folder, you've got my Go mod up here, and the subfolder. That's how it's then detected as a result.
It's not implied by the folder there. You still have to basically say, I am in the service folder, which essentially is the service package, which then groups it all into the module, which means you can then import it at that point.
Yeah, indeed. So think of it a little bit like classes in .NET and your folders in .NET. That's how I've been kind of mapping it anyway. Similar idea.
Okay.
And it's just the fact that and I get where the confusion comes in, because you've got like this github.com thing. You're thinking, oh, well, I need it on the main branch before I can go ahead and actually use this thing. But no, it's only if you don't have that local dependency. It will go and fetch that out. And exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's a nice elegant plan. So as a first step then, could we implement that pattern
back
to
into
remove, say, the struct, the player decision that we have there?
Yep. Here we go. So let's see then. So let me zoom back out a bit. And I'm having to go and fix my indenting. I've got no idea what on earth was going on here, but it is horrendous.
Now, is there not a linting tool?
There is, and on my Mac it works by default. I've clearly not enabled something you see here, but I'm not going to battle with. Oh, it just did it.
So Shift Alt F would be, Shift Alt F on VS Code.
I mean, I just hit save and it just did it on its own, even though I hit save a minute ago and it didn't. I don't know. Right. And something I learned the other day actually as well. This github.com/google/uuid package is the same as generating a GUID in .NET.
Right.
Same idea. It's just this is the package then that we need to use to generate that.
Okay. And there's nothing native in the platform to do that. It has to be.
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed. You've got a few primitives like strings, ints, etc., but it's fairly basic and fundamental, but a lot of extensibility then.
Cool.
Thereafter. So yeah, I guess then let's have a think about what we'd want to do and think about it in that kind of .NET mindset. We might have our controllers, for example. Might have our service.
Models as well, I would guess.
Models, yeah. Which would be that one. Models. That's probably a good start, isn't it? So
Yep.
let's go do that. I'm going to create a new file called player decision.go. Call that package models. Put that in there. And then we're going to have to import cloudwordpress.com. In fact, I'm not going to remember all this.
I was just say, yep, it's easier to just.
Yep. Do that. And then models. There we go.
GitHub at the start of that.
Oh, good point. Thub.com.
There you go.
Not used. Okay, good. So then, let's think. Are we using it anyway yet? Decisions. I won't hit save yet because as soon as I hit, in fact, I'll comment it out. I won't get rid of it. So let's move that for a sec. Next up, arguably we could probably import the controllers from elsewhere. Which would be all of these items, I guess.
Okay.
So let's go and do that. And then I'm just going to call this controllers. I'm change names later. That in there. Obviously, we've got some issues here. So we need to go and import.
Yep. What it said there.
Time it thinks is in there, which it's not.
No.
That's just code spaces playing tricks. It's that one. And then that guy. Now we need to change this to be models.
Okay.
I think. Player decisions.
Capital P, wasn't it? I know, because player decisions there was an array, was a
correct. So we'll need to have
of player decision objects.
Yes. So what we'll next need to do is move that across like that, and then
that's going to be model
X.
start. Yeah,
That's it, just like that. So now
that's model start.
Indeed. There we go. Right, so obviously now we need to go and import our controllers in here. Why am I doing this to myself? Controllers. Controllers. Oh, is that working? Exported by.
You would need to make those uppercase now because it now
Indeed.
needs to be public to that package.
Exactly. And that's quite a nice little pattern, actually, isn't it?
I have learned something.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go. Controllers.
There you go.
Controllers. Right. On with the truth, I suppose.
Yeah.
Dev, where are we? We're in ToolUp Tuesday.
Yeah.
That'll be in there. Did I put it, actually?
ToolUp's got its own folder, yeah.
Yeah. I'm the other one now. Spacebar, top, player decisions. See seems to be running.
That seems all right.
That's a positive sign. So if I go over here, there we go, 404, which is reassuring.
Yeah.
Decisions, good. And then if we go for 2, sweet. Margaret is back.
Excellent.
That's what we like to see. So there we go. That's refactored and a lot tidier, which I'm a lot more comfortable with there now.
That's
And
awesome.
does that make some sense then? You know, mapping the packages back to the to that concept there.
Yeah. And I think that's. I think it's almost enforcing what I would consider to be almost like the one class per file
Yeah.
mentality.
What I will say is I really do like Golang for the past kind of week and a bit that I've been using it. There's just, I don't know if it's a VS Code thing in particular or the tooling within Go or what, but I feel like I'm having to almost think less for certain things, and it's kind of helping me along the way.
Yeah.
It's a really, really interesting language there.
Yeah, it's quite intuitive, I think.
It is. It is.
I
And I just thought I'd pop that on screen there for our good friend Liam. No, it is not Tuesday. We're just very tardy this week. But thanks for joining, Liam. And we're good, thank you. Hope all the same with you.
Yeah, it feels. I'd be interested to know how when projects get big, whether or not it still feels the same way.
Yeah, indeed. But so far,
it feels like you can get the wieldy fairly quickly.
Yeah. It's one of those that you definitely need to know your concepts. But I mean, you could arguably say that about any programming language, right?
Absolutely. There are .NET projects that I know that are absolutely in that same boat. Absolutely.
The thing, and I get it from a theoretical perspective, but the thing that I do find myself just occasionally when I'm coding in this, looking at is I've passed in a parameter or I'm providing an output from a method or a function. Am I passing the value here? Am I passing a pointer or the address to the value? And just trying to think of the context of has that method now executed, is no longer on the stack, or that value has been removed for whatever reason. And it's making me think of those kind of things, which is good because I guess I'm thinking about it from a scalability perspective, I suppose.
The one that we haven't touched really is the kind of the composition model for want of a better term, objects.
Yeah.
Like and particularly around the interface model as well is a fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
It is very much the looks like a duck and quacks like a duck. It's a duck.
Yeah.
Model.
I mean, if
it's an implied interface.
if I jump back to this other project I was working on here, just to go back to your excellent example there, what was I changing there? Did I change anything? Oh no, I just typed in, didn't I? There we go. I don't need to save that. In Go, I think there's a pattern or a whatever you want to call it. My brain's not thinking right now, but they normally call it specs, I think, rather than interfaces.
Yeah.
But then you've got interface as a type over here, so 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
But here is my, I guess, tenant model. So bit of background, I'm in my spare time, you know this, but for viewers' benefits, trying to work on an end-to-end event platform management tool. So think of stuff like Cloud with Chris or meetup groups or whatever, and you want to go ahead, coordinate your speakers, coordinate your social posts to go out, all of those things. It takes me a ton of time. I don't have the time to keep on top of it. I want to automate some of that, and that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm trying to make it multi-tenanted. So I've got my tenant model in here, and the interface then for the tenant service itself. So not the implementation, but the interface. If I go over to main.go, I think, what I then have is a controller struct, which takes that, which implements, what am I trying to say here? Which has a service associated with it, which has to meet that
spec
interface, that spec, exactly. So you can see then when we get into main, I create that controller, but then I have my service, which is imported from over here. And in here, I have the new service function here.
Yeah.
And all it does is just create a new instance of that service then, which is then what is used in the controller. So again, kind of similar to what you'd see with .NET, I guess. You have your controller, you pass in that almost... It's a little bit like dependency injection.
That's where I was going to go. Yeah. It's that same kind of model. And I think the little bit of digging I've been doing this week was around kind of the whole idea of unit testing and mocking in this space. Yes. I did see that.
Yeah, that's...
We've all felt that pain with Terraform.
And yeah, this is the one thing that I keep tripping on, is I keep thinking, right, I've got this. It makes sense. I understand it now. And then I go to try and actually run a test and write a unit test. I'm like, hold on.
Yeah, so the theory is, and there are mocking frameworks that will do it, that will effectively generate Go structs and Go classes. Terminology is still a problem for me on this one.
Oh, yeah, same.
That effectively provide a mock implementation of an interface that you can then inject into your tests. But it means that whole process of moving the creation of those objects outside of the scope of the thing that's under test.
Yep. Yeah, indeed.
Which is always an interesting challenge. And it doesn't seem to be as joined up in Go in terms of the language support, the library support, or frankly, I may be missing it because I'm on week 3 of whatever it is. So.
Right, and this is it. We're very much looking at this from the learning in the early days. So anyone who's got a load of Golang experience and judging us right now,
please
please judge. And for a start,
please come on, explain.
Yeah, exactly. No, so there we go. We've talked about packages. We've broken those up into the different, if you want to think of them like namespaces, into those different folders and files there. Yeah. So there we go. We've done some refactoring, which is good.
Yeah.
So we've got an hour left of our stream this evening. How do we want to go from here? Do we want to actually start implementing some stuff? Do we want to get a database in there, or?
We should. I think we should. We need to. Our end goal, and I'm not suggesting for tonight, our end goal should be to be able to enter some data as a user to basically do a turn.
Gotcha.
So a day's worth of events. So player enters something or makes a decision about something. World events then kick over. And it can all be static. It can all be, hard-coded a day. So it's the same thing that happens over and over again.
Yeah.
But we've got all these little kind of disparate components now. It's how we join all these together and how we start bringing them together. And I don't know whether that means actually getting some kind of almost mock data source in there with this.
Yeah, I think so.
Like augmenting now and changing this Go project.
Yeah.
Start saving something somewhere.
Yeah.
Even it's just you could almost do it. Let's just save a JSON document to the local file system. And
I was thinking exactly that. Actually, what's the simplest possible path you can go down?
Because I know that there is a file system integration for Go. So
yeah,
I think there was. I've been looking at different languages this week, so I can never remember which is which.
Which other ones have you been looking at?
So I've been doing a little bit. I've been digging back into filling some of the gaps I've had on .NET, actually.
Okay. Nice.
So it's been a long time since I played with things like Entity Framework for the on the
Yeah,
data.
gotcha.
And then I started a little bit of looking at Rust, and then a little bit back at TypeScript again.
Yeah. TypeScript is
and then
nice.
A tiny little bit of Python again as well, just because it was one of those languages that I dip into occasionally, go, yeah, all right then, and then walk on to something else. So I've been bouncing around between a lot of different kind of different programming.
How have you found Rust? Because it's very low level.
I am very early days. I mean, my background, one of the first jobs I had was writing C++ code,
Okay.
C code, and low-level WinNT4 stuff. So I've felt the pain of the memory leak.
Hence the Twitter handle.
Pretty much, hence the Twitter handle. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
And so, sorry again to Fortunkum Margaret on Twitter. I will never make that mistake again.
So yeah, I'm intrigued to see whether or not the hype of that performance and power, like C++ performance and power, without the shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
Because there's probably years of my life I've wasted trying to track down an errant allocation somewhere.
Look. Yeah, indeed. Oh, fun. I never particularly got on with the low level stuff. Like theoretically I understand it, but it wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah, well, back in the NT4 days, early kind of Windows 2000 days, I was doing a lot of work with network devices, IP devices, and serial devices. If anyone remembers the serial port that used to be on every PC, and I was doing a lot of work with serial, and the only way really to do performant work on serial ports was with the kind of native C++ interfaces. .NET got one eventually, but this is kind of just about dates .NET by about a year or so. So yeah, I'm fascinated to see exactly how good it is. But yeah, I don't know whether it's probably going to be my go-to. But as an experiment, it's interesting.
Yeah. While we were talking there, by the way, I was glancing across at the code again, and something I just noticed again. Back to your question around Mux versus Gin. See this kind of C indented JSON thing here? That's all based on that Gin context that has come in. So it's that whole kind of wrapper and object around that they've made in that Gin library there. Whereas Mux is very, very basic. It is literally just that kind of handler. I'm going to pass you off to this function handler. That's it. You don't get any of this nicety in terms of like I want some indented JSON, I want this or whatever. This is a nuance of
so if you were doing that in Mux, then how would you go about replicating the same thing? Would you then need to bring in another package or another module?
Not quite actually. Let's go to my tenant service. Where would have done that? Controllers. So let's look at the create one because I give that back. So what I'm doing in this one is trying to separate out the service concept as much as I can so that the implementation below is, completely separated as much as I can. But then what I do once I've got a tenant returned, if it's not nil, then I do what's called a marshalling of a JSON. And the terminology, again, why they chose Marshall, I'm not quite sure, but
serializing, is it? Effectively?
Yeah, exactly. So then I get my response, and then I can just write that out then. Which I should have an example.
It's interesting, this replication of the error equals or not equal to nil. Have they got the concept of like a try-catch almost, or is it just a...
This is what I've seen as the common thing across anything that I've read. That one. I'd be surprised there's not a try catch, but
I haven't seen one in my
no.
exploring, but it seems, again, it comes back to that verbose pattern, and it seems like good practice because it's forcing you to actually handle the error.
Yeah. The other thing I've learned is because I had loads of these in my code initially, and I've tried to strip it all out now, is using panic in Go as well.
Oh, yes.
So panic is effectively, cause the application to crash and stop. So it really got me thinking actually about the implementation patterns of what I'm doing here. Like if I get an error because the JSON can't run a Marshall or whatever, is that something which would cause the application to stop? Well, no, I just return a HTTP response there, a bad request. So it makes you then rethink actually how you go and approach that then as well, which is quite nice. So like you say, error handling.
It also forces, it gets away from that pattern of, you certainly see it in .NET where you bubble up errors.
Yes.
So you can't handle, throw it back up again, another layer, throw it back up again, another layer.
You get so many layers of complexity, don't you?
Yeah. I suppose at least that way you know the point at which the error has occurred.
And I will say it does feel quite lean as a language. Like if there is like a pointer to somewhere else, it's in this file and that's it. I don't have to go dig to dig to dig. Again, maybe to Liam's example, if you've got those 1,000 lines of Go in a big project, maybe it'll be different there. But from what I've seen so far, seems okay.
Yeah.
Seems okay. Fun bit for the side for you. Just going to the service implementation using Dapper.
Ooh, we like Dapper. We love Dapper.
We do. And honestly, it's been really nice to go and use because it is just a case of I'm going to save that state to my persistent store. I'm going to save that state to my cache as well and do like a cache aside type thing. So right through to both. And then if I'm reading and it's not in the one, read it, save it in the cache then on the way back. All of that kind of stuff. Implementing those patterns is super easy. And
is it worth explaining
I don't have to care.
To people that haven't seen Dapper a little bit about Dapper, because it's one of those terms that gets bandied around, and actually when you start digging into it, there's a whole ton of functionality under there. There's a whole ton of reference services.
Yeah, I'm going to use that trusty tool, Paint. So let's keep it really simple for a minute and just think about a web front end which talks to a database. You wouldn't do this. Typically, you'd have an API in front, but let's just think of absolute basics for a minute. If you have that kind of scenario where you've got your database coupled directly to the web front end, that's really tightly coupled. And if you want to change that backend database at any point, it's going to be a pain. You don't really want to have those dependencies in the front end anyway. Typically, what you'd at least do is have something like an API layer in between. And this is, I guess, a pattern we see a lot all over the place. You've got your API, and that API goes and talks to your database, and all is good. But what happens if you wanted to change out this database because no one uses Chris's cool database anymore? They suddenly use this newfangled Margaret database these days. You knew that was coming. And you want to switch that out. Then there's potentially a couple of challenges with that. If you have written your code in a way that you've put interfaces in, you've written clean code, etc., then it's probably not going to cause too much development effort potentially, but it could. Never say never, right? But there's the potential for an easy shift out. If you've written your code to really tightly depend on Chris's cool database, then you've suddenly got to rewrite that entire API because you're not targeting those SDKs anymore. It works differently, etc. What Dapper does is something quite clever and quite cool. So Dapper is called the Distributed Application Platform Runtime, hence Dapper. And effectively what it does is injects a sidecar alongside the service that you're running. And that sidecar then is effectively translating some of those calls that will go out to the state stores, for example. So rather than in my API calling Chris's cool database, instead I have something like this, just client save state. It doesn't care about what that backend state store is. It's just effectively that interface to go and do it. The client sends it to the sidecar. The sidecar then deals with we're going to this particular store, so I need to send it over here, or I need to send it over here. And that deals with the complexity of the implementation. And so it abstracts away a lot of that coupling, I suppose, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And from my point of view, like, the cool thing is you can think about the Dapper sidecar as just being like a little API you don't have to write.
Yep.
Because that's essentially what it is. Your main API is talking usually over HTTP, but it sometimes does gRPC as well, to that connected sidecar that's basically sat next to it, and then relaying all those requests over to your chosen store. But it's not just, the thing I found really cool is it's not just these kind of save state stores. It's this idea of, if I'm doing something, if you've ever used something like Azure Functions, where you've got these triggers where, I might want to have my code run when a message is dropped on an event queue or a service bus or something like that. Normally you'd have to write specific code that says, let's just sit and monitor that queue, and when something happens, then run this bit of code. With Dapper, you write your code as effectively like an HTTP endpoint. So I want to say, I'm going to listen for requests on this HTTP endpoint. And then the Dapper sidecar is the thing that's then sitting and listening for that mailbox or that queue or that topic or RabbitMQ or whichever one you want to do. And then the sidecar will then post back to your HTTP endpoint. So all you ever really need to care about is, I just write an HTTP listener, which is fairly standard web stuff. And then Dapper will handle the integration with the external services, which is super cool. Because every one of those SDKs that you have for all of those services, if you wanted to write those natively, are different. So there is no kind of unified way of, you've got to write bespoke code each time.
I think that's where it's particularly cool is, we've talked about the state store example and switching between different state stores, but if you were building that multi-cloud application where you want to use SQS or Service Bus or I don't know, Kafka, RabbitMQ, whatever technology you want to throw into the mix there, it is just a case of going, okay, well, instead, that's the binding I'm going to use. The code stays the same, but there's the binding.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep, it's very, very cool.
Yeah.
We've got a very, very simple example there, actually.
There we go.
I've got my example there. We bring that one up.
Yeah, there you go.
This is something that actually Chris and I were doing whilst we were playing, wasn't it, mate? We were having a play around with this, and you can see this is a .NET minimal API.
Yes.
So there's not anything particularly impressive here. It's a single file that just has a couple of post operations. So I've got a post thing called input binding 1 and input binding 2, and then I've got a hello world just to prove that it's working.
Yep.
And then I've got a store request that I can then use to save stuff to Dapper.
Yeah.
And if you look at these are basically a HTTP thing they're going to accept a post request on this address, on this /input binding. And when it arrives, we're going to grab an order ID. It's just literally going to grab that value from all it cares about, that it's coming from the body of an HTTP request. And then what I'm going to do is then use Dapper to then write it out to somewhere else. So I'm going to write out to another output binding, effectively.
And that's it.
And that's
it. From a service perspective as well, just to pick up on the point you were saying, if you wanted to write it out elsewhere, even if you were calling another service, service discovery is normally one of those things where it's like, how on earth do you manage that?
Yep.
With this scenario, it's just a case of, again, let the sidecar handle it and figure out where it needs to go and send it to.
And then all you're doing then is just configuring these bindings, and these are little YAML files that say, I'm going to use storage queues, for example. I'm going to reference input binding 1, which was the name of the endpoint I was talking about, and then some just configuration stuff for that. Now, what's cool about that is if I then think, oh, don't want to use a storage queue anymore, they're a bit kind of early 2000s. I want to use a proper service bus now and have sessions and persistence set up. I can now just switch my YAML configuration.
Right.
That one's pointing at input binding 2, but I could repoint that at input binding 1, and now my code hasn't have to change, but I'm now talking to a service bus instead of talking to a storage queue.
But now in the real world, there's obviously considerations you need to make there in terms of like failing over and in terms of how you'd train your clients to fail over and these types of things. So there is some operational logistics that need to be thought about, but from a pure code perspective, that is really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I have a feeling I know what our design decision is going to be in terms of that backend data store somehow. I have a feeling it might be involving Dapper somewhere along the way.
I think so. What's nice about Dapper actually is if you're developing locally a lot of this stuff, there are the Dapper tooling for running locally. Well, it uses all of the kind of the Docker desktop, WSL stuff to basically provide all those sidecars for you, and any of those components it'll bring in as well.
Well, that's what's been fun is whilst I've been developing that other project, I've literally been switching between my PC and my Mac for development. If I've been doing something, sometimes I'll try and build it on my Mac and think, actually, maybe I won't build it here. I'll just switch back over to the PC. But I've also been using Azure Container Apps as well.
Yeah.
And because I've got all of the infrastructure as code spun up, ready to go, etc., it's just a case then of saying, just deploy it. Does it work? Great. Or nope. And that experience is seamless across container apps, across my local environment, etc. It's really cool.
Yep. And actually, that's, after we'd spoken before, this example is now based on has a set of deployments for Azure Container Apps that do exactly the same thing. So there's my input binding 1 defined, ready to be deployed out to my my Azure Container App, and the whole code just goes up and then just runs, and I don't have to think about the configuration.
Nice. No, I do like this stuff. So it feels then back to the rabbit hole that we entered probably a few discussions back. We sound like we're going for a Dapper implementation here and probably going to needs to have some kind of state store, and I think we can have a state store for a local file as well, actually. So we can even try that as an approach.
I think I have one in there somewhere. There we go. Local file secret storage. You want to keep secret stored in there as well?
But that's for the
secret management. Storage state.
That's one for blob storage,
no, that's using the... I'm sure you can do... we'll figure it out.
I'm literally just opening up the docs here now for Dapper. Just taking a look. Component reference. State store components. Let's see. So generic. Interestingly, it's not a local file.
You want to share your screen?
Yeah, sorry.
Because actually those Dapper docs are really good.
Yeah, so docs.dapper.io, and I literally just navigated through the menu on the side here at this point. Reference, component specs, state stores, and here I am.
So I tell you what we could do is we could use Blob or Table or one of those, and then run it through the Azurite emulator.
That could work. Yeah, true.
Because it would then give us persisted storage.
I mean, we could also just use blob storage. It's not like it's hard
We
to
could-
spin up or anything.
Yeah, but it adds complexity on getting the project out and then just running it. Mind you, I suppose actually getting Azure right and then spinning that up and then running that as well.
It's probably more.
absolutely.
It's probably harder than going into the portal, going, "There's my blob storage account done."
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Point taken.
Okay, so in which case then we're going to need to add. Hold on, which one are you? So let me get rid of that. Get rid of that. Bring that back up. So we're probably going to want to do some stuff in here, aren't we?
I think we're probably also going to need to flesh out the decisions, aren't we? Or is the decision was in response to a world event, wasn't it?
Decision was in response to a world event, yes.
But right now, all we've got is a yes or no on there, which.
Yep.
We're probably going to need some additional context for.
I think we probably will. Yep.
What that decision is.
I think it sounds. What I'm thinking, and feel free to shoot this down. World events gets generated. You have like option A, B, C, or D, but A, B, C, or D are already pre-calculated in terms of the effect they're going to have.
Yeah. Okay.
So that would just be part of like the JSON.
That would be
doc,
simple.
effectively. Yeah.
That would be simpler because I think when we were originally talking, we were talking about you have a whole set of variables that you can tweak.
But I mean, those variables could be part of that just world event generation. It just decides to go, right, we're going to choose this property, this column, whatever, and we're going to multiply it by this or add this or do this, for example. And that's just part of the world events engine's task.
Okay.
Just going for simplest option here at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, so let's go for something easy then. Let's try and replace that player decisions slice that we have there with some data store somewhere.
Okay. So I am going to do a bit of cheating, given I have got a Dapper implementation over here, just to speed us along a little bit.
Excellent.
And I'll talk as I go. For now, I'll just put it straight into the controller. We can focus on bringing that apart and refactoring again later. So first, what I'm going to do is just bring in this Dapper package or Dapper module here. I'm calling it Dapper explicitly. You'll see why in a minute. Because if I go and get something here, what you will see is I create this client and use that as my client's object. Whereas if we imported this in like that, you've then got the conflict of the name client a couple of times here instead.
Okay, right.
So you'd have to do like client.new client, and then you got client. It gets confusing, so
right.
Call that Dapper instead, like that. So this is obviously something we're going to need to change in a minute. Or maybe not.
No, we just need to
get this. Yes, we won't need to do anything actually. So do some error handling.
Yep.
So you got errors. Okay, that works.
So one interesting question there then is that get decisions, is that getting all the decisions, or is it getting all the decisions for a given world event, or is it getting all decisions for a given user?
As if we past us thought that far.
It was impressive we managed to get the thing running in the first place.
I guess you could look at both, couldn't you?
Yeah.
You could look at both. I mean, for now, maybe let's not look at the getting from it because we first need to get data in there.
Yeah.
So how about this one down here? So do that. I'm just going to comment out all of this for a minute. Okay. So code spaces to the rescue. If I really wanted, we could go and do it this way, but no, that's not what we're going to do. We're not going to do HTTP. Do we have... Because we do have the model, don't we? So
yeah. So if you look at the bit we had before, we had a way of binding to model.
So let me do something. Hold up. Decision. That. And that's not going to work.
Why are you doing that in the error?
Oh, and I'm writing it in the wrong one as well. Bear with me. So the reason I was doing it like that, remember the Golang can return multiple values at once. So what I do in my implementation in my other one is I return the object as well as any errors. So I return, for example, the tenant object when you've created it. And if there's no errors, then errors just returned as nil.
The only reason I would question that is that at that point you're effectively marshalling a parameter from the body, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So if there's an error that's occurred, then you wouldn't necessarily have a model.
No, but what this does, this new model, etc., is this is effectively returning the null version of that. Because if you tried to put nil it in this approach over here, it would complain because there's no pointer there for that.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, we don't need to do this here because we're going to rely on Gin. So let's see. C.error. That's probably good.
That need to be returned as well.
No, interestingly. Because when we did this before, we didn't return anything.
Except if you're... So if you look at line 66, yeah, we are. So because
I think it's an
end of
implicitly returned. Yeah. So there we go. Let's do that then. Yeah. Let's do that. Then I'm going to do the same over here and be consistent.
So then the object we want to get is from, I would guess it's C dot. There we
exactly.
Go. That's the bit we need to get. In fact, can't you just do what's there anyway? The bind JSON.
Yes, I can actually. I can.
So you need the object that was created above, so line 44 that you've got there.
Yeah, this one here. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is the interesting thing, isn't it? Is where we're jumping between different implementations, seeing how they slightly differ.
Yeah.
Like this is that kind of address of kind of approach.
Yeah.
Yes. C dot error return. Cool. Right. So now at that point we can create the album, which would be something. I'm not going to do a cache and a persistent store for now. Let's just do a store.
Yeah.
So you also need, when you're using Dapper, context. So I'm just going to go up to the top here. Copy that. So you can see it's now imported that context package.
Okay.
Follow that link just to show you what that does.
Background then, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's all around like cancellation signals, these kind of
Right,
things.
okay. Yeah.
So background from memory. There's a non-nil empty context, it's never cancelled, has no values, and has no deadline. So kind of dangerous.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
So there we go. So I'm just setting that as a variable that can be reused across all of those functions there. So that one's dealt with. Store, we need to give a name. So this is the name in Dapper of the what's the word? My mind has gone blank here. Those files that we create for the mappings, the YAML files.
Component files.
Thank you. That was the one.
Yeah.
My mind just went completely blank. We'll call this. Sure. Bullet player decisions. Thanks, Code Spaces. Next up,
Copilot.
Copilot. My
You've
brain
said
is
Code
really.
about 3 times tonight, and it's
I know. My brain is not firing this evening at all.
it's
dear.
thrown me at least once. I was like, what are you talking about?
Thank you for correcting me. I am not firing. Right, so we're going to do that. We're going to base. So effectively what this constructor we're putting here, we're sending that context, we're specifying which store we want to write to, we're specifying the key that it should be written to, and we also need to specify the data that we're going to be...
which is going to be our new decision. Yeah. And then what's the last nil there?
That one I don't know, because I'm sure when I looked at the docs, it didn't really give anything particularly... hold on. But maybe the delete one. Anyway, save state.
And so it said last write, didn't it? Isn't it? If you looked in the way you were a minute ago.
Save state.
So,
that's right. There we go.
Default. Oh no, that's default options.
So if we had a look, client, state, save state.
There you go.
Context, names, key.
The options by the looks of it.
Yeah, there we go. State options. And that.
Yeah. So what's on that then?
There we go. State concurrency and state consistency.
Right. Okay.
If we try and find those.
That must be where you might get some leaking of the underlying implementation, I wonder.
But I left it as nil anyway.
Yeah.
So, for now, futurist problem, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Always futurist.
Yeah. Really
right. I know. So then...
Maybe a C dot error.
Yes, it will be. It will be. You're spot on. Your brain is working a lot more than mine this evening.
And then just return from that.
Yeah. So create the new...
You need to return after line 49.
Yep. Just thinking, what will we return?
No, in your error block, mate. In your...
Oh, yeah. Sorry, yep.
So what we typically done in the past is just return the indented, just that one.
Exactly. Seems to look good.
Yep. So does that save state handle upserts then as well? So if I post something with the same ID,
I think it would. Yes.
okay.
It's the reason I'm smirking is because I went through the same thought process when implementing my APIs. So I've kind of done I've got an update API, but I explicitly check if it exists or not, and then I do return the error. But that's more because of the fact that I've got things like tenants that I don't just want to be randomly, they want to be gone through the proper process. Yeah. That's why I'm smirking here, because I went through that thought process. So I would say we want to create a components file.
We do, yes.
I'm just gonna probably do this off screen in a minute, or at least open the stuff off screen, because I know there's some component files which I have which I don't want to be shared on screen.
Well, you can do it in the same project.
Yeah, I've never had much luck with it. And I know it's something I've just configured incorrectly, but now,
so when you run the Dapper tooling, it's just a matter of making sure you pass in that path.
Yes. And I remember now where I had issues. Because I was using the built, I was using VS Code to its limits and spinning up Dapper alongside when I run the Go routine, etc. Blah blah blah. It was struggling to find the local file, and I couldn't figure out why. It was a path-based thing, so I just used.
I remember. Yes, when we were playing around before, you had all sorts of issues with your Go path and the home path thing. So, yeah. Okay.
So let's just do this. So decision, a player decision. Stop. I'll just copy these. Use a table storage one. Okay.
I think it's worth pointing out as well that right now there's no managed identity support. That's right, isn't it? If I remember.
Correct indeed.
So your connection strings you have for your storage accounts will need to be the full key.
Yeah, indeed. As you can see here, account key. So let me just check the name. So it's called Player Decisions. So we're going to call this component Player Decisions. Yep. We can use state.azure.table storage, and the place we're getting that from is over here. Nope, that's blob storage. Table storage. There we go. So you can see where these names are all coming from in here. State.azure.table storage there. Version is v1. And I've got to replace those details as appropriate. So I'm going to go just create a storage account.
Well, if you've got the ITA there, you can just use the standard connection stuff.
Yes, I do have the emulator actually.
And if you haven't used it before, you've been using Azurite recently, and Azurite is now the replacement for the old Azure Storage emulator, and it's very good.
So it was this, wasn't it? Dev store account 1.
Yeah.
Account key was that.
That looks about right. Yeah, it's a fixed one, that is, isn't it, for the emulator?
Yeah. And I'm just going to bring up Storage Explorer a sec just to create a table for us.
Did Dapper not create it automatically then?
Don't think so. I think it does. Happy to be proven wrong though.
I thought it did. I thought they created them.
Table storage state provider will create one. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
okay. But you can't rely on that for each component, though.
No.
Okay, so... Oh, and hello, Storage Explorer. Okay, so... That's there, that's done. One other thing I'm going to do is just copy... debug experience from my other project. Right. Let's just do this. Right, so launch.json. We're going to launch the... what is this one called? This is the decision API.
Yep.
Dapper. Source. Restart. Play decisions. Good. And then in my tasks, what we're going to do is we're going to have
the app IDs, player decisions.
Yep. And we didn't. Oh no, we would have picked a port, wouldn't we? 8080. Okay.
Yep.
There we go.
Now I've not used these Dapper D debug.
That was one of the things that I had to set up as well because it wasn't configured right on my machine. Which was a
so they're part of the Dapper tooling, are they?
Yeah, indeed. Now, what happened?
Assuming I've configured it. Just to double check.
I'm sorry?
In your task file, did you call them both PD? One's called just D. Yeah, there we go. Why pair programming works, people.
It is. Why is my... Why are you not picking up? Oh, silly me. Right. That goes there. That goes there. That goes by. And now, there we go. That's better. Dapper shutting down. Why is Dapper shutting down? There we go. Player decision succeeded. So it looks like it was having issues getting to... I don't think my emulator started correctly.
No service entry.
The storage emulator is already running. Only one instance. Okay. I think I'm just going to go for a blob storage rather than try and debug my local emulator.
Fair enough.
Just for the sake of simplicity. So all I'm going to do, folks, is create a new blob storage account.
AZ storage account create.
Nothing particularly exciting. Don't worry, no one is missing out. I can assure you. And then what I'll do behind the scenes is I'll just update that components file to use the account key and the appropriate name of that storage account as well.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to have some way of getting that across to me as well, so that I have that.
I will give you a way. Do not worry.
Yeah, I
Carry a
mean,
bit
I
of-
think this is one of those challenges around Dapper is actually when things go wrong, because you're now abstracted away from the underlying service. Actually, debugging some of this stuff can be a little bit of a challenge. But the error logs, as you can see here, they're pretty good. We kind of wish it would say can't connect to storage account.
They almost go another layer deeper. But
Yeah.
And this is it, right? Any decision we make with things like this is all about trade-offs, and that's the trade-off we're making here.
Yeah.
Right, let's give that a go. Oh. No, yes, because we have not added it yet, have we? So
Go install is it?
go mod tidy. We need to run first, I guess. Oh,
You need to stop your debugging. Looks
I had.
You've got another. Oh, you've got a different window open. It's the other terminal window. No, if you go back to terminal.
To terminal. My bad. Yeah.
You've got one above, which is bash.
Oh no, that's just my normal bash prompt.
Oh.
That shouldn't be running anymore. Fun. Let's see. Oh no, I think that isn't running anymore. That's just my debug console. It has stopped.
C.
Well, it says it is waiting on port 88.
Yeah. What happens if you call it?
Yeah, go now.
I know you need to do a post to it, don't you? I know. Yeah, you should still be able to get.
Refuse to connect. Kill it that way. There we go. That's fun, isn't it? Anyway, go mod tidy. There we go. So you can see it's.
So it's now pulling that in. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
And did I see right that is it go get was the usual kind of that's been deprecated or is being deprecated now?
Yeah, I did see something around that. Oh, what's happening here?
It's just died, but it looks good.
Yeah. Standalone mode, fatal to start metric server, address already in use. Okay. So because it didn't shut down properly, which implies to me I've done something wrong over here. So we've got. You know what? I'm just going to do that and leave them as is.
You have to change them in the launch then as well, don't you?
I will, yeah. Yep. And then the other thing I'm going to do is kill those off. Good, that's better. Right, another go. Run. Okay. Right, that's better. Cannot use new decision as type byte in argument to client save state. And this is what I meant earlier, that on my Mac, before I save this stuff, it will actually prompt and tell me things like this. So I've clearly got something misconfigured between the two here.
Okay.
But nevertheless, let's take a look. Let's see.
Right, so
There we go.
it is doing it now. Just
cannot use new decision as byte value. Yes, because new decision is an actual object rather than the byte array. So that's where I would typically marshal those. So I don't think that quite works as.
so is there an equivalent in to bind JSON in? Because JSON.marshal wouldn't do the same anyway, because that would still create you an object at the end of it, wouldn't it?
Can I use
In your example.
so what I pass in, I think, in my example, is the JSON string.
Oh, so in that case, then, can we just get the body?
Yeah. Let me just double check. Data, and data is the Marshall JSON, yeah.
Okay.
So C dot raw data might be it. I'm just going to look it up though, just to be safe, rather than us try and pull the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Chin Golang get body. Right. There we go.
Hmm.
And you could see it moused up over that, gave an error, linted it, and automatically imported IO
Right.
util. And again, this is what I mean. A lot of the tooling is just there to help you.
Yeah.
And I did know this about Golang before starting using it, but you can add modules as well to do more stuff for you. It's really nice.
Okay.
There we go. That seems to
Root.
do a thing.
So let's see if we.
A thing is happening. We have not created any HTTP yet. So we're going to get on, what was it, 8080, wasn't it?
8080, yeah.
And it was decision. Oh, sorry, it's going to be a post anyway.
It's in your controller, isn't it?
Yeah. That's going to be in main. That's where my mappings are. Post / decisions.
Yeah.
So post. Then,
Content type.
yeah. It was just like that, wasn't it? Content type, JSON.
Yeah, the REST client helper puts that stuff in for you. And then we just need an object.
A bad request. Good. So now, if we just steal one from over here, and we'll just
fill in some data. Yeah.
Exactly. What is the time format in Go?
I would like to believe year, month, day. But
It'll be something like that. Oh, but it was just a string anyway, wasn't it? I think so. It doesn't really matter for us.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be no validation. So invalid character D. Looking for beginning. Oh, no. JSON.
Now, what key command are you doing to automatically wrap that in double quotes?
I'm literally just selecting it and typing the double quote.
Oh, I didn't realise you did that. That's clever.
Yeah, yeah.
And there
So
we
we're
go.
created, and now for the moment of
So
truth.
we now go and look in our table.
Yep. Storage browser. Tables. Okay, so there's no value.
Yeah,
and the
'cause
row
it's,
is correct.
It's treating it like a key value pair, isn't it, from memory?
No, so what it should be doing is it should be implementing, submitting that as the object.
No.
And then the value should be. So got the decision ID, right?
Did it, or did it just insert the first one? Because it's just
can-
try submitting a different number and Yeah.
Yes,
Right,
the
still
key
have
is
it, right
correct.
then.
So we're just obviously not passing in the value correctly. So, and this is why I really like this setup that I'm working with now. And I didn't really need to kill that actually. Is I can now start adding breakpoints.
Cool.
Yeah, it's going to be there.
So it looks like the only bit it's picked up then is that new decision ID.
Yeah, not helpful.
So what's the open data at the end of that then?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, length 0.
That doesn't look right.
That does not look right. So it looks like something hasn't quite worked there.
So it looks like what you could do would be to do a go back to what we were saying before. Do JSON Marshall on your your new decision object.
Yeah. Because I think what happens is once you've read it, it's gone.
Yeah.
So let me just do this then. Do something like this. Stop that. And yeah, we're going to do that here. And new decision. That JSON data. Save that.
Have you got background music playing on this, by the way?
Yeah. We normally do.
Oh, I thought I was hearing things.
Yeah, no, we normally do. Quite lively today. That's why I think. I don't know why. Because I don't have any control. It's something just done as part of the service. You pick like a type and it does it.
Right. Okay. That's right.
Whereas normally
it's
they
just on the edge of hearing.
Yeah. Right. So, moment of truth. Oops. That looks good.
Yeah.
I reckon. There we go. Created.
Okay.
And
So
then, too many windows. Right. Yep. There we go.
And it's upserted as well. So it's because you changed the ID, didn't you?
I changed the ID, yeah. Okay. But if I change wrong way, if I do this, and then do
Margaret.
Of course, you knew what was coming.
She's our #1 tester.
Right, and then do you upsert? Yes, there's Margaret. So there we go. I mean, we've done an hour and a half there, so we probably should start looking at wrapping up, I suppose. But
yep.
Again, I think we've made some good progress. We have refactored from a big long file of stuff.
Yep.
Into I'm trying to find our window. Tasking, no good. You want to explain while I find the window, actually. What we've done.
So we talked a lot about very cool bits of technology for a start. So we re-established our understanding of how Go files are structured. We've refactored the project, the player decision engine, to just make it proper. We've talked a bit about Dapper and how awesome Dapper is. We have then added a save state provider to the player decision engine to save that stuff to table storage using Dapper.
Quite a lot, actually. Yeah. Because now the next bits, in theory, should be fairly trivial to actually implement. Updating. We just need to tweak that update API. The get is literally going to be using the get state. Awesome. I think then we'll just need to start marrying those two systems together. But again, I think the world's engine we can Dapperize as well, because that'll be a .NET one, so that'll be something different.
And that's one of the big selling points for Dapper is that actually it's designed around kind of the old microservice architecture. So where you've got microservices written in multiple languages and don't want to have to try and figure out different SDKs each time, you just figure out the Dapper one.
Yep. No, exactly. I think we know our plan for next time then, mate.
I think so. I think that sounds like fun.
Excellent.
Pleasure as always, mate.
Absolutely. So we'll be a week and a bit, I guess, because we're Thursday, but next time we should be back on a Tuesday, I think.
I hope so, yeah.
Don't foresee any reason why we shouldn't be. So, see you on May the 3rd. Almost Star Wars Day.
Almost Star Wars Day, yeah. Absolutely.
See you soon, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good one. Bye.